Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another live stream, and thank you so much for tuning in for another show. A lot has been happening in the past couple of days with many developments forcing Benjamin Netanyahu to consider very serious actions, especially with the threats and the ultimatum that has been given to him by the Orthodox elements in his government, and a new proposal by the opposition to completely take down the Israeli Knesset, with a confirmation that now members of his coalition are joining the motion to take down the government next week. A lot of that is causing Benjamin Netanyahu to consider many things that would lead to bigger escalations. Escalations potentially against Syria, more attacks in Lebanon. There was just an attack on the southern suburb of Beirut again, but most dangerously, an attack against Iran, especially with recent reports that the talks between Iran and the United States are reaching a halt. The United States is still insisting that Iran must stop to enrich uranium. That's something that Iran considers to be a red line. In the meantime, Benjamin Netanyahu would be looking to capitalize on this situation and potentially get the top aim, the top goal that he wants out of all of this, which is going to a war with Iran, with the United States at least backing him in terms of defense. However, let's begin with the flotilla. Freedom Flotilla Madeleine has taken off, and now it's on its way to the Gaza Strip. Usually, when a flotilla goes to Gaza, that shows you the level that the world has reached, the level that the countries have reached. Every country under the sun is unable to force aid into the Gaza Strip. We're talking about the world, as in everyone. Countries close to Palestine, countries far away, countries that constantly talk to us about human rights and all of that stuff. No one is able to get aid to people. People are being starved to death. Therefore, individuals, started to take action to try and break the siege of the people of Gaza. These people are not politically affiliated with anyone. From their perspective, they're only trying to implement the basic humanitarian thing. Get aid to a starving population, children, women, elderly. And despite all of this talk about some aid going inside of the Gaza Strip, the Israelis are committing massacres with United States mercenaries right next to them. But now, of course, this ship has sailed, this flotilla, this Freedom Flotilla Madeleine, looking to get basic stuff in. This is something symbolic, by the way. I mean, a ship, even if you take like 3 or 10 ships, it's not going to be enough. Gaza needs a lot of aid, but these people are trying to do something symbolic against the inaction of countries that have the power and the means to break the siege of the Gaza Strip. But now Israel is threatening to arrest and deport its members. Not just threats to deport and arrest its members, but also potentially take military action. So there were reports that there were drones hovering over this flotilla. People who were on board were already saying all of this. And if Israel wants to arrest and deport members of this flotilla, they would have to carry out a military operation. They would have to send their elite forces to go on that ship, force it to stop, potentially shoot to warn, get in people inside of it, force it to go to one of the ports that Israel controls, and then arrest these people and potentially kill some of them, by the way. Now, these people who are on the flotilla, I have a good reason to believe that they already know that they are at risk. It's a very big risk that they're taking, but that shows you the nature of the people who are willing to take that risk and willing to sacrifice their safety, their comfort zone from whichever country they're going to, just to help the people. But from an Israeli perspective, they, of course, do not want to allow that, and they do not want it to set a precedent. Because if this flotilla succeeds, there will be potentially many more flotillas to follow. However, the risk is there. Israel is preparing to take action, and Israel will most likely take action unless that is relevant and the required pressure is applied on them diplomatically and from the countries that are relevant, countries that these people are coming from too, so that they do not do anything to these people. However, again, that is very unlikely. Moving on to the next subject that I wanted to talk to you about. Israel is very well known to support terrorist groups. Israel is a terrorist state at the end of the day, so it's totally normal and natural for it to support terrorist groups. Israel, after the Hamas movement won the Palestinian elections in 2006, they started to support radical movements, radical terror organizations inside of the Gaza Strip to try and topple Hamas, take Hamas down and bring these people to take their place. One of these movements was called Jaysh al-Islam. They call themselves Jaysh al-Islam, or the Army of Islam. They kidnapped Alan Johnston, who was a BBC reporter, and they kidnapped other journalists as well. Hamas gave them an ultimatum and eventually released Alan Johnston. At the time, the BBC reporter, alongside others too, and after Hamas fully took control over Gaza after multiple coup attempts taken by previous members of the Palestinian Authority, now under the Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas in the West Bank, things became more under control when it comes to Israel. However, now, in the past few months, the Palestinian resistance in Gaza, it has been declaring. Many times they declared that Israel is supporting criminal elements inside of Gaza and organizations of terror to take down the democratically elected government, the authorities inside of the Gaza Strip, and also loot the aid and wreak havoc. It started by multiple Israeli attempts. Now, for people to get a better context here, Israel and multiple people inside of Israel had a plan to divide the Gaza Strip and also the West Bank into what they call emirates. Basically, a few tribes controlling, having territories that they control, and they wouldn't necessarily have any problems with Israel attacking them, so that the Palestinians can't have even a state in the West Bank and inside of the Gaza Strip. Now, after the genocide began, Israel saw that the Palestinian population and all of the people of the Gaza Strip are sticking to their principles, to their land, to their rights, and into their resistance, their right to resist the occupation, which is enshrined in international law. That frustrated Israel very much. Therefore, they resorted to making certain offers for tribal leaders inside of the Gaza Strip to try and convince them to start accepting the aid that's coming from outside of Gaza into the Gaza Strip. Why? Because Israel did not want any aid going into the Gaza Strip to be adequate, to be enough and sustainable. And they did not want the authorities of the Gaza Strip to manage and deliver that aid accordingly, although we're talking most likely about international organizations such as the UNRWA and other organizations too. That failed, and there were multiple statements coming from the leaders of the Gaza Strip in the community, the significant figures that Israel approached, saying that we're not interested in having any aid going into the Gaza Strip unless it's aid directly dealing with the relevant authorities, because at the end of the day, we are the people of Gaza, and the authorities in Gaza, they have been elected by us, and we can't go against the resistance, especially during the time of war. Now, in recent weeks, we've been talking about this, and I've shared a couple of videos with you of the Palestinian resistance targeting elements working with the IDF. Palestinians who were, some of them were imprisoned, some of them were criminal elements, some of them from radical groups, and some of them from the previous Palestinian Authority before Hamas was elected inside of the Gaza Strip. Israel, after the 7th of October, targeted the prison of Gaza deliberately to let these criminal gangs out. They targeted them, and then they started dealing with them. Now, the way that Israel deals with them is directly through support. Now, there were previous notions that this support, well, it's Israel allowing them to do certain things, or Israel turning a blind eye, that there would be armed people moving around and looting aid. However, now, and outright, Israel is actually confirming. So there was this report here and multiple other reports as well in Israeli media, confirming that these people escaped from Hamas prison, meet the leader of the clans that Israel is arming in Gaza. And in this case, they're talking about a man called Yasser Abu Shabab, who was a criminal, convicted criminal, who was imprisoned. But this extends to other members too, and other movements as well. Now, in this case, Israel is outright confirming that they are arming them. Israel is sending arms to these people, weapons of all sorts that they need, and they're also funding them, and they are protecting them too. These people are calling themselves like the counter-terrorism unit, or sometimes they'll have other names too, to loot the aid, prevent it from getting to people, and stopping the people from getting the aid. However, there was a more blatant and clear statement coming from the previous deputy prime minister, who was allied with Benjamin Netanyahu, the previous defense minister, and he was also a member of a joint party both him and Netanyahu had at the time, Avigdor Lieberman. Avigdor Lieberman said that the state of Israel transfers weapons to all kinds of clans in Gaza, some of them affiliated with ISIS, criminal families on Netanyahu's orders. This is the first outright confirmation coming from an Israeli official who held top senior figures in Israel, confirming that Israel passed weapons to elements with ISIS into the Gaza Strip. Now, some of you might already, of course, know this. However, Israel previously supported elements who were close to ISIS to try and topple Hamas, take the Hamas government down. However, now they're outright saying that, and it's not only that website talking about it too, multiple other websites spoke about it as well, including the main Israeli Broadcasting Authority website with the Netanyahu's approval and the Shin Bet promotion. This is how the clan was formed in Gaza. And here they're outright confirming that Israel is supporting armed groups inside of the Gaza Strip to try and fight against Hamas and take Hamas down. Some of them, again, affiliated with ISIS, according to the previous deputy prime minister, Avigdor Lieberman. How is that succeeding? And is it succeeding? Is it going to go ahead? Is that Israel's best bet? Well, according to Israeli reports, you're talking about between 100 to 300 people. Now, these reports might be not very accurate. However, if they are accurate, we're talking about a very insignificant number. This is a very desperate attempt when Israel ties itself with criminals because no one else is willing to cooperate with them. And in many cases, these criminals have previous ties with Israel, or were informants, because the Shin Bet is involved in taking these people with them on board, and also recruiting more people inside of the Gaza Strip. Now, where does the Palestinian resistance sit here? What is their role? What are they going to do about this? And is there a prospect of these groups, including ISIS, taking over in Gaza? And that's it, taking down Hamas and create a big vacuum, a big situation where it would work for the favor of Israel. Well, the Palestinian resistance already spoke about this a long time ago, but now the confirmation that's coming from Israel is supporting the story and the previous confirmations of the Palestinian resistance. As a matter of fact, the security of the resistance in Gaza, they just released a threat saying that every individual involved in the ranks of the mercenaries is considered an Israeli soldier. Anyone who deals with Israel or is operating in areas under Israeli occupation now in Rafah are considered legitimate targets. They will be targeted just as the Israeli occupation forces are, using ambushes, explosive devices, and all the means available to the resistance. And they also said this is a confirmation of what its intelligence agencies had previously mentioned regarding the close relationship between the occupation and the armed groups working with Israel to serve its plan. So clearly we have a situation where the Palestinian resistance is wide awake. It's very aware of the situation. And they're not waiting for Israel to confirm. The only thing that this Israeli confirmation did is, again, validate what the Palestinian resistance has been saying. Moving on to the next thing that I wanted to talk to you about. Benjamin Netanyahu has been facing very, very tough times recently, with no scope to reach a solution with the Orthodox elements in his government. Yuli Edelstein, one of his main figures dealing with the Orthodox community, he spoke with some of its leaders, some of the community leaders, and in recent days they said that after the meetings the divisions became bigger and the gap became greater too. He wasn't closing the gaps. As a matter of fact, he was threatening them with more intense sanctions. So he wasn't only saying, if you don't go to the army, you will be in prison. No, the whole community and the people will be facing sanctions if they do not support those people going to the Israeli army. These sanctions include cutting off the funding, removing any freebies that they have, financial sanctions, and also orders that prevent them from leaving the country. You're talking about a whole package of sanctions, and Benjamin Netanyahu, his elements in the government who are dealing with the situation between the Orthodox community are going full force with them. That left the leaders of the Orthodox community no option but to confirm that that's it, game over with Benjamin Netanyahu. There was another meeting that happened between Edelstein and Netanyahu. It doesn't appear that anything significant came out of it, to a level where the Orthodox members of the coalition now said that they will be voting for a motion pushed by the Israeli opposition to dissolve the government, take the government down. What's Netanyahu going to do? What is Netanyahu going to do? And these reports, of course, came in multiple news websites inside of Israel. Well, Benjamin Netanyahu's attempts in recent, months and just 1.5 years now since the genocide began was to escalate. For example, Benjamin Netanyahu declared an all-out war against the Lebanese. He went to an all-out war against Lebanon. And also, he started to escalate with other countries too, with other fronts, trying to keep as many fronts open as possible. And now, especially with these reports, he's pushed to the corner. He needs to do something very significant. Like Rabbi Hirsch said, that's it. We're expected to soon leave the government after several meetings he had with members of the Orthodox community. Other reports as well that they're of course going to be supporting the motion to completely withdraw from the government, take the government down as submitted by the Israeli opposition. What does Netanyahu have? What can he do exactly? Benjamin Netanyahu has one option out of this: reach a level of escalation that could potentially stop all of this from going ahead. What is he going to do? Well, he's going to try and find something to escalate with Syria, for example. There was a report of an attack from Syria happening yesterday, and Israel responded. Again, no clarity. Lots of things that are happening in Syria are not clear anyway. The authorities there declared many times that they're not interested in escalation. Lots of things to de-escalate with Israel. And it could be an Israeli move. Of course, there are people who are willing to, of course, carry out attacks against Israel, and every country around Israel has the legitimacy to carry out any preemptive strikes against a genocidal entity run by a psychopathic war criminal. But fact of the matter is, Netanyahu can carry out stunts that would deviate the attention from him. The other option would be for him to try and push the Lebanese resistance into a full-out confrontation. Again, Hezbollah and Lebanon, they are clearly showing that they're not interested in such escalation. As a matter of fact, their senior figures met with the Lebanese president or prime minister, I think, trying to kind of reach a solution towards the arms and what have you. But that isn't stopping Israel from carrying out attacks against Lebanon. Now they attacked the southern suburb of Beirut. They sent a warning. There was a confirmation that there was a warning sent, but these were civilian buildings at the end of the day. So from an Israeli perspective, it's not in the areas that they are looking to officially target. They're asking for the Lebanese to remove any arms that are south to the Litani River. Beirut is north to the Litani River, and that hasn't been included in any of the drafts or agreements or even ceasefire agreement between Israel and Lebanon as mediated by the French and the Americans. But Benjamin Netanyahu is trying to drag more and more people or countries into the war so that he can potentially take away the attention from him. Now, how will this work for Netanyahu if he, for example, manages to get a response? Well, number one, there is no guarantee that Benjamin Netanyahu would get a response. But there are certain things happening, especially between Iran and the United States, that show you that something might go wrong between the United States and Iran, especially with the talks not really going as planned. And as a matter of fact, there were multiple reports that there's this technology being passed to the region from the Americans to the Middle East. Fuses for rockets that Ukraine used to shoot down Russian drones have been transferred to U.S. Air Force units in the Middle East. The decision to divert the fuses Ukraine prepares for more drone missile attacks from Russia is a blow to Ukraine. Is the escalation imminent? This is one report coming from Israel here. Now, of course, this could be a dual move coming from Donald Trump. The recent attack that was described the biggest attack against Russia that came from Ukraine, with drones attacking some of its strategic bombers. It did not come after a consultation or an approval from the United States, and that could be a message coming from Donald Trump. However, Donald Trump, if he knows that an Israeli attack against Iran is imminent, he will have to do something to try and also protect himself, because the Iranian ultimatum that was given to Donald Trump, they told him that we will attack any base that of the United States, even if no attack is carried out from that country against us. So if Saudi Arabia, for example, the bases in Saudi Arabia or Qatar or any other location, they do not have any attacks being carried out against them from those areas, Iran will still attack them. Iran told them, we're brothers and we have a brotherly relationship. However, if there is an attack against us, these bases will be under attack. So Donald Trump could potentially be preparing the ground for an escalation that he will be dragged into, despite the fact that he isn't necessarily fully convinced with the idea. As a matter of fact, he spoke with Benjamin Netanyahu multiple times, and he told him that we would prefer for there to be a solution rather than an escalation. Now, from the talks perspective between Iran and the United States, well, they said that they're not continuing now. They're not setting a sixth round of talks so far. Why? Because they are at a situation where the United States is asking Iran to stop enriching uranium. From an Iranian perspective, that is a red line. As a matter of fact, there were multiple statements coming from the Iranian Supreme Leader and the Iranian Foreign Minister saying that it's a red line. In this report here, Khamenei slams U.S. proposal, vows to keep enriching uranium. The Iranian foreign minister said, no uranium means no deal. That's confirming that the United States under Trump is still insisting on Iran not enriching uranium, which is, by the way, an Israeli demand. Again, another proof that, well, the lobby is still strong in influencing Benjamin Netanyahu. However, that doesn't necessarily mean that the United States will be attacking, especially with the tensions that have been happening between Israel and Donald Trump, especially the Benjamin Netanyahu government. And as a proof that, well, things can change and that, well, Donald Trump can change his mind, Donald Trump recently had a massive row with Elon Musk to a level where he's threatening to cut his government contracts. Now, Musk was responsible for supporting Donald Trump with approximately $250 million US, which is approximately the same amount that the Zionist lobby supported Trump with. Despite that, things started to escalate. Tensions between him and Donald Trump started to escalate heavily. Elon Musk outright started to criticize some of Trump's moves in relation to taxes. Now Trump came up on Truth Social, and he said that, well, one of the ways that we can save a lot of money is to cut the support, the government support for companies that belong to Elon Musk. That will save us. That will save us a lot of headache. As a matter of fact, this was the actual post that Donald Trump had on Truth Social. The easiest way to save money in our budget, billions and billions of dollars, is to terminate Elon Musk's governmental subsidies and contracts. He wrote on his own network. I was always surprised that Biden didn't do it. This just gets better and better. Musk replied to him, and then he also criticized him even more. This shows you that Donald Trump, although he might have had the support of Elon Musk and hundreds of millions from Elon Musk, look at how things flipped internally. You're talking about American tensions here. Well, something can also happen between him and the Netanyahu government, especially with the fact that he made all of these moves recently, taking people off who are pro-Israelis, of course, not visiting Israel, senior figures canceling their trips to Israel. However, despite all of that, the Netanyahu government, senior figures in the Netanyahu establishment, they still have some sort of a hold and they still have some influence. That's why Donald Trump is still insisting on banning Iran from enriching uranium. Why? Because, well, Donald Trump previously said that enriching uranium wasn't a red line necessarily. He said that he was interested to reach a deal with Iran. And, it's not going to be the end of the world if we don't reach a deal, he also said. But the talks and the demands about Iran stopping to enrich uranium started to pop up after the Israelis started to ask the United States to do that. It wasn't necessarily a demand purely from the United States. And the fact that he's saying that now, and the fact that there are these reports of the United States sending certain technology to the region, shows you that there might be an escalation happening there between them and Iran. One very, very clear move too, and this was like blatant, is the recent veto. The United States just vetoed a Security Council resolution demanding a permanent ceasefire inside of the Gaza Strip. What happened? Under Biden, there was a UN Security Council resolution to have a ceasefire in Gaza. After Joe Biden confirmed that Benjamin Netanyahu at the time accepted the ceasefire. What happened now? It's a clear indication that the United States isn't really genuine about all of this. Talks and positivity and Witkoff going back and forth, but you can't even pass a UN Security Council resolution calling for a permanent ceasefire. And by the way, even if this passed, even if the United States did not veto, there is no confirmation that this would have gone ahead anyway. Because the Security Council, at the end of the day, they're not enforcing anything. The United Nations, as a matter of fact, they're not enforcing anything. There were already, you had the ICJ calling to stop the genocide, then the ICC issuing arrest warrants. What's the United Nations? The United Nations is an organization without teeth and claws. They're only there to talk about nice things, tell you about human rights and what needs to happen. But when things get really serious and they need to take action, they don't take action. And despite that, the United States went and vetoed the resolution to have a permanent ceasefire inside of the Gaza Strip. These developments that have happened in the past couple of days, primarily the fact that Benjamin Netanyahu is in a lot of trouble and he's about to collapse, basically his government is about to collapse, is a real threat, there's a real possibility that there might be something happening here. Because Benjamin Netanyahu, firstly, he went into a government that consists of people like Ben Gvir and Smotrich after over a decade of not having them in the coalition when he had an option to, out of pure necessity. No one else was interested in having a coalition with people like Ben Gvir and Smotrich. So he was desperate to a level where he had him in the top figures of the state of Israel, which caused a lot of problems, by the way, and we can still see how much problems it's costing and it's causing Israel. He did that to be a prime minister. Why did he want to be a prime minister? So that he can go ahead and push for a judicial reform. Why did he want to push for a judicial reform? So he cannot be imprisoned. Him insisting on remaining in this position is for him to keep himself safe. and run away from justice. Now, with the genocide that happened, the courts in Israel started to flip against Benjamin Netanyahu. The corruption case started to go against him after a Supreme Court ruling, which didn't exist before, by the way. But even the Supreme Court have had enough of Benjamin Netanyahu. Therefore, now he has to go and face trials. But he can still hide. He can still ask for exemptions. He can still, ask for breaks, or he needs to leave or whatever for security briefing or what have you. But if the coalition collapses, Netanyahu will not be the prime minister. If Netanyahu collapses and his government collapses, there will be a call for early elections. Netanyahu would have to immediately call for early elections. In the polls in Israel, Netanyahu isn't as popular as he was before the genocide began. He still has popularity, but not as much as he had before. But the bigger problem is the fact that his main allies do not have the same popularity as before. And every poll published in Israel in the past 3 weeks shows that the opposition is able to form a coalition. That means goodbye Netanyahu. Goodbye Netanyahu means no more exemptions, no more breaks from facing the law, and potentially less protection globally with the arrest warrants that are issued against him. Netanyahu and his top aides have been trying to lobby countries to, give him a break, try to threaten, of course, the ICC to get rid of the arrest warrants. That didn't happen, of course. He still has some safe havens. He visited the United States and he visited Hungary when there were arrest warrants against him. But if he loses the position of prime minister, there's a genuine risk. And this prolonging of this whole genocide was primarily led by Benjamin Netanyahu. It, of course, represented Israel in its true nature. Genocide, ethnic cleansing, all of that is Israel as a state. Since 1948, we have never seen a good version of Israel or of Zionism. But Netanyahu, he took it to a level where it suits him most, and so that he can address all of the things that he wants, his personal interests. He might lose that. He is in a very difficult situation, and because he is in a very difficult situation, there is now more likelihood than ever that he will have an escalation that the United States will find itself forced into with him. And these were the main things that I wanted to share with you in this live stream. As usual, I hope I added some beneficial information for you, and I will see you soon in the next video. Peace, everyone. Salam.